Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. I'm so pleased to be joined today by former Ambassador Elie Yerushalmi. Elie, it's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And your timing today is really perfect because, as you know, and you'll share with all of our viewers, IDSF authored a very important letter this week to President Trump, and it was hand delivered not to President Trump because he didn't stop in Israel, but it was hand delivered to Ambassador Mike Huckabee in Jerusalem just this week. And just a note for all of our dear followers of these briefings, if you want to see the text of this letter, make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter. We're going to send out the actual letter a little bit later today. So if you're not on the newsletter, you can look in the YouTube description for the sign up or in the Zoom chat for the sign up to see that letter. And among the signatories of the letter is much of the leadership of our movement, including Ambassador Elie Yerushalmi. So, Elie, why don't we start off? You can share with us a little bit of the contents of that letter to the president and really the significance of this letter.
First of all, I'm honored to be, to sign this letter to President Trump. And the letter has been written in a very important and crucial time for the state of Israel and for the Middle East. Basically, the letter talks about almost every subject we can think about vis-a-vis the Middle East. And the importance of the letter is to re-stress Israel's position and our position, basically, of all of us, to the president concerning the different issues. To remember that even though he's in the Middle East and he's not visiting Israel this time and so on, the importance of Israel, the importance of Israel's security, especially the importance of the friendship between Israel and the United States. All this has to be taken into consideration, and also for the president to consider Israel's position vis-a-vis when he talks to the leaders of the different Arab nations. And that, of course, is very important that all of them understand that his friendship with Israel is a major block of any deal that the Middle East is going to see. And I think the fruit of this letter we already witnessed today. I'm sure that we're going to be seeing this in the future. In Israel, there was a kind of mood, especially a kind of gloomy mood amongst people in the right wing in Israel, that in a way, President Trump might be even abandoning us and kind of, falling, quote unquote, for the for what's happening in the Arab world. When you come to countries in the Arab world like Saudi Arabia and like Qatar and like others in that region, and you see the wealth and you see the power, and you know that Saudi Arabia just signed the most expensive arms deal in world history of, I think, $150 billion. You might think, Israel in all this is just, something very, very little and minor, but it's not. And we weren't kind of, bypassed by President Trump. And today, when the president met with the forces, with the members of the American forces in Qatar, he came back to the issue of Gaza. And what he said about Gaza is that the population of Gaza has to move, and it has to be in a way controlled by the United States to rebuild Gaza and so on. And this is not the position that we heard yesterday from the Arab leadership. They were talking about maybe Arab countries taking control of Gaza, of Hamas maybe staying there unarmed or something of that nature. No, that's not the case. President Trump reiterated his historic position vis-a-vis the Gaza. And this proved to all of us and to all those who were a bit skeptic that President Trump is a great friend of Israel, and that he understands, he and his government understand exactly what is going on here in the Middle East. No doubt that the visit of President Trump to this region has tremendous importance, and we still don't know what consequences this holds for the Middle East. No doubt something important happened here, is happening, and so on. So the visit was crucial to this region, and we'll have to follow the next few days. In a way, I'm kind of in a disadvantage here because I'm talking to you while the visit is still going on, and I'm sure that next week or in 2 weeks, we'll be much smarter to what exactly happened during this visit. So we'll have to wait and see. And what I'll be doing with you here is kind of trying to guess together with you what are the different issues that are on the table. The first thing I want to mention is the murder of Tsela Gez, actually last night in near Bruchin in Judea and Samaria. Bruchin is not somewhere remote in Judea and Samaria. A lot of my friends live there. I have family there. I think 10,000 Israelis live and use the road that was used yesterday by Tzela Gez on the way to give birth in Petach Tikva in the Beilinson Hospital, and she was murdered on the way to the hospital. The baby was the baby is alive. He's in a very difficult situation, and she unfortunately passed away. No doubt that this is very difficult for all of us, and only an hour ago I spoke to my daughter who was in the foreign ministry, who's now representing Israel in Miami. She started to cry to me on the telephone, and I understand what happened. She said that Tsela Gez is actually a wife of one of her husband's best friends. So this brings this murder to very close to all of us, and of course the intention back to first of all what's happening in Judea and Samaria, which is one of the fronts in this war. It's a bit you tend to think more about Gaza and Iran and so on, but Judea Samaria is definitely a major front, and it's the front which is closest to most Israelis, meaning either you have about 600,000 Israelis living there, but every Israeli who lives on, let's say, on the other side of the so-called Green Line is very close to Judea and Samaria. If you now
Ellie,
go,
if
yes.
I can just interrupt you for a quick second, for
Mm-hmm.
all of our viewers who watch these briefings, 2 weeks ago we did a live briefing from Peduel, which is right down the road. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that Ellie is describing right now, if you want to see some video footage of that really special area of Israel, check out the briefing from 2 weeks ago with General Ari Singer, and you can get a sense of that location. Ellie, sorry for interrupting you, but now I just want to make
Yeah.
sure people have a broader context.
That's very important because this whole area is what we call the balcony on Judea and Samaria, overlooking the Tel Aviv area and most of central Israel. So this is a very crucial area. And what I wanted to mention is that I'm now speaking to you from the first floor of my home. On the second floor, from my second floor balcony, what I see is, and this is in Maskeret Batya, near Rehovot, central Israel, I can see the whole city of Ramallah. And I always joke with my friends that I always say good morning to Abu Mazen. When I go and have coffee on the balcony. Excuse me. So everything here is very very close, and this is why this murder hit all of us, because we're talking about areas which are very close to where most of us actually live. So that's on the Judea Samaria front. Then we move to Gaza. Gaza, what we witnessed a few days ago is the release of Idan Alexander. The Israeli soldier is also an American citizen. Of course, this is very important that another one of the live hostages was released, and now we have probably 20 living hostages, 3 that we don't know exactly what happened to them, and the rest are bodies of deceased people who were actually kidnapped by the by Hamas. So this is what we're talking now, and we're trying again to get as many people alive and bodies out of Gaza. And this is of course, very, very crucial. There's this argument in Israel. Some say we can't do this by force. Some say we can do it only by force. I'm one of those who say that without force it cannot be done, because Hamas, the last thing it's going to do is to release hostages. That's their that's the only card that they have, basically. So I don't see them releasing hostages, or at least not all of the hostages. And Israel is acting in the Gaza militarily. We probably killed Muhammad Sinwar, the brother of Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who is now the leader of Hamas. And you probably saw the bombings that looked very much like the bombing of Nasrallah in Lebanon, for those who remember what the pictures looked like. And Israel is acting militarily in the Gaza. So you have this combination of trying to get hostages out, military action, and the most important thing is that we have to clear, excuse me, the Gaza Strip from the control of Hamas, because without that, we're basically back in square one, and we can't live with Hamas on the other side of the fence. Excuse me again. So this is concerning Gaza. The second point, we now move to Iran. Iran, to my opinion, if we do not solve the Iranian issue now, this is what we call in Hebrew Bchia Ledorot. This is going to be something that we're going to cry about for generations. The Iran issue has to be solved now, and this means that the complete dismantling of their nuclear program. And here also we hear from the United States different nuances of how to negotiate with Iran and so on. Israel is very tough on this. Basically, most Israelis think that the only solution here is the military solution. But if Iran dismantles its nuclear capabilities and allows inspection and so on, we might see something else. But we're very skeptic about this. We've been in this movie before, and I think that Israel and the United States are talking about a real total solution to this issue. Iran will not be nuclear, and of course, there's the difference of nuances, but I think we're in the same headline, it's the same head wave, and we're going to see Iran dismantled somehow, probably militarily. So this is concerning Iran. The third issue I wanted to talk about is Syria. President Trump met with Giuliani, or as he's called, Ashara. The guy is a terrorist, meaning have no doubt in your mind that this guy is not a good guy, but he's handling himself pretty well as the president of Syria, trying to assume control and trying to reach control over the different groups in Syria, including two groups which are very close to us: the Druze and the Kurds. So here it's very important for us to see what happens in Syria. Of course, there's the issue of Syria being a country which has a frontier with Israel, that the Israeli military is holding strategic positions right now inside Syria. So let's say President Trump meeting with him, trying to bring him on board the Abraham Accords and so on, it has importance, but I wouldn't bet on it. Meaning, a lot of Israelis are already joking, have we reached the time that we can, have some falafel in Damascus? I don't think we're still close to that, and I think we have to be very, very careful with what happens in Syria. You have to remember that there's also another partner in Syria, that's Turkey. On the northern side of Syria, Turkey has forces inside Syria. Turkey is not a friend of Israel. It is a member of NATO. Erdogan is a friend of President Trump. So we're talking here about a very difficult game we have to play here with the Turks, and the Turks are trying to move southwards. We're trying to reach an agreement or a red line in which we'll have to tell the Turks, look, this is pretty much your frontier inside Syria. So all this is very, very difficult, and I'm sure that President Trump will have a lot of to play in this pretty dangerous game between Israel and Turkey. Lebanon actually is pretty quiet, meaning every time we see something happening there, we attack. We kill terrorists, who are out in the open. We destroy munition dumps and things like that. But basically, I think the Lebanese government, at least, is trying to do its best to dismantle the Hezbollah as much as it can. So this pretty much covers all the boundaries of Israel. And no doubt we're going to a different Middle East. I think these are the guidelines of where we're going to. And then we'll have to wait and see, and we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. Excuse me. Let's move a little bit to the what's happening around the world. You have the Russia-Ukrainian war still going on. We all thought that maybe we'll see some kind of meeting between Zelensky and Putin, and maybe President Trump being there and so on. Putin is not budging very much. The situation is still very, very difficult. The Russians are still, they have their conditions and so on, and they're still bombing, and the war is still going on. It's very, very tragic. We'll have to see how the issue here is solved. I know President Trump is putting a lot of focus on trying to end this war, but it's a very, very difficult war, and its base is not only the Russian attack on Ukraine 3 years ago, but we're talking here about things which are deep, deep and rooted in the Russian psyche from the days of World War II and even before. Don't forget, Ukraine was actually on the side of the Nazis, most of them. So you have here a very, very difficult situation vis-a-vis Russia-Ukraine. Tough issue to solve. Let's hope we can solve this. It seems like India and Pakistan are on the verge of not fighting a major war that we thought a few days ago. If we see a war between India and Pakistan, this means all hell is loose, two nuclear countries. But luckily for us, India and Pakistan, at least their militaries, are very, very careful, and they understand that any mistake here can lead to a tremendous human tragedy. So I think we're pretty much limiting this, and I don't see any major war now between India and Pakistan. And of course, last but not least, China. We'll see the Americans reach some kind of financial agreement, economical agreement with China. Let's hope it works. Meaning the less tension between the United States and China, the better, because this also may lead us to places that we don't want to go. China and Taiwan, very, very difficult issue. So let's hope, and China is also involved a bit in the Middle East. So we hope that things with China will be at least stable. So we're in for very interesting times, no doubt, in the next few days, weeks, and months. And meanwhile, I would like to wish all of you, before we answer questions, happy holiday. It's Lag BaOmer. In Israel, unfortunately, we used to have bonfires all over the country and so on. It's out because bonfires are dangerous. It's a war situation. The weather is not good and so on, but still we're trying to celebrate Lag BaOmer, and there's going to be the holiday today in Meron. So for those who celebrate Lag BaOmer, happy Lag BaOmer. Thank you very much.
Elie. Let me follow up with that very thorough review of everything that's happening right now, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. So, as you touched on, President Trump has made some bold statements in his trip to Qatar, talking about the U.S. taking over Gaza and making it a freedom zone. I'm curious if you have any insight or thoughts of what exactly does that mean? Will there be U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza? And in particular, making that statement in Qatar, how do you think the Arab world is going to react to that?
I think the Arab world is very, very cautious about President Trump. and I think they're trying to appease him as much as they can. I eventually think if President Trump said it the way he said it today to the American military in Qatar, I think eventually there will be American boots on the ground, although the Americans won't like to say this, but I don't see how it works without that. I don't think they're planning on having some kind of control over Gaza with mainly Israeli boots on the ground. Don't think that's going to happen. There's going to be some kind of combination between American and Israeli interests here. How exactly is this going to work? I don't know. We're all joking that we're already ordering hotel rooms for the next Pesach in Gaza. I don't think that we're even close to that. But note that the fact that the United States wants a piece of the action of the rebuilding in Gaza is very important, for Israel, of course, that's going to be a very comfortable solution, and I think the Arab world, most of it at least, will accept it.
In the event that Hamas is completely destroyed as a governmental and military entity in Gaza, when you look at the day after plan, you still have to deal with this immense hatred of Jews in Israel amongst the civilians of Gaza. So even if there were boots on the ground by the U.S., again, let's assume that scenario, and the U.S. is fully invested to rebuild in Gaza, how does that effort happen when you have a completely radicalized society?
That's why some of the society has to be moved to other countries. They can't stand together. This is if they all stay there, that's a recipe for disaster. So something has to move, and it's interesting that even the Arab leaders that presented a different program to President Trump of maybe 10 Arab moderate countries controlling Gaza and so on, they also said that one of the important things they're going to do is to change the education in Gaza and to make it without all this hatred to Israel. So they also understand that this has to be done. It was interesting, when I was the diplomat in Egypt. So I remember that we came into all our belongings were coming into an apartment in an apartment building in Alexandria, and the apartment right next door was the apartment of an Egyptian engineer that was kicked out of at that time by the Libyans because there was tension between Libya and Egypt. And both of us, are with our belongings on the way to our apartments, and we became friends. You're living right next door, Egyptian, Israeli, doesn't matter, friends. So I remember when we went to visit their home, I sat down with the kids, and what I wanted to see is their geographical atlas. And because I was curious to see how does Israel appear on the Egyptian map. And then what do I see? Israel, of course, is not existent. There's only Palestine, and there's only the Arab cities, meaning there's only Jaffa, Haifa, and Al-Quds, which is Jerusalem. So, and this was Egyptian education at that time. So this was still a remnants of the hatred, which is still there between the Egyptians and the Israelis. All this has to be gone. And I think there is more and more, and this is a slow process of acceptance by the Arab world of Israel. And of course, the Gazans, of course, will have to be part of it. But of course, it's very, very difficult because the level of hatred now is poison, meaning it can't get worse than this. So this will be part of the process, the issue of education.
Elie, thank you so much. Before we went live, we were chatting a little bit about the civil unrest in Beit Shemesh, and I'm curious if you can just comment on a broader scale. How is Israeli society doing right now with this war?
That's a tougher question I've been asked so far. Israeli society is going through a major crisis. And we have to understand that while we're fighting this war, Israel is actually being remolded again as a country. And part of this remolding, and I spoke about it in the past, is an issue of an elite that is now losing ground in Israel, and a rise of a new elite. Now, the old elite, the old guard, is the old socialists who actually founded the country in a very secular, liberal way, if you want, in their minds. And you have the new elite, which is a kind of more right-wing, modern Orthodox, more Jewish, and you have a clash today between these two elites. And this is why you see a phenomena in Israel like the old guard doesn't it understands that it probably will never win an election again, because the majority are on a certain side. They're more on the right-wing side of Israeli society. So if they don't win an election again, they have to try to hold as much power as they can. And where do they hold this power? In the economy, in the legal system, partly in the military and defense establishment, in the media, of course. The media is very left-wing in Israel, except for Channel 14 or maybe even Channel 15. So this is part of a clash, meaning when you look at Channel 14, for instance, and you look at Channel 12, it's like you're living in two separate countries. Let's say for the American viewer, it's like CNN and Fox. You see an event, and you see two different interpretations of this event. And what's my fear, and the fear of a lot of Israelis, is that we're losing the possibility of even talking to each other. You see this especially in areas like Tel Aviv, in northern Tel Aviv, where it's complete, very left-wing. People who are Orthodox feel uncomfortable in Tel Aviv. And this is something that, we never thought will happen. So there's almost an animosity out there. So this is part of it. And you mentioned Bet Shemesh. Look what's happening inside the Orthodox world. And you have today the issue of people who are Orthodox, modern Orthodox, who go to the army and make the sacrifices that they do in the army. I think the amount of fatalities in the Israeli army in amongst what we call the national religious is way beyond proportion. And on the other hand, you have in Tel Aviv people who don't join the army because they're against Bibi's government, or they're in units which will never even get close to the front line. And you have the ultra-Orthodox which don't go to the army at all. So, and then there's animosity between the modern Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox. So all this is part of the molding process. And when you see this in the media, it looks like, wow, you can be completely pessimistic about the future of Israel. But then when you close your TV a bit and you just go on the street and you talk to people, it's completely different. More than 90% are pretty much in the middle and can reach an agreement. Meaning when people talk about a possibility of, God forbid, a civil war in Israel, Israelis are not going to participate in this game. So all these issues which irritate all of us, meaning who is in control, how much control is given to the Supreme Court, and so on, which can drive people crazy here. All this eventually will have to be solved somehow, and not by force, by talking. And the talking will be done by the people on the ground, not by the people in the media or the politicians, which have gone to complete extremes. So this is where we're standing right now. Meaning, on one hand, we're fighting a war so crucial, Gaza, Iran, survival of Israel, and the second hand, we have this inner thing going on inside Israel. It's very, very difficult. And to tell you the truth, and it's true for myself at least, the inner Israeli situation is much more frightening and much more crucial than the what's going on the outside. So let's hope for the best.
Ambassador Elie Yerushalmi, thank you for all of that. And I will second what you just said, that sometimes you read what's happening in the news and then you walk the streets, and certainly even here in Beit Shemesh, you walk the streets of Beit Shemesh, there are many, many, many wonderful people, very patriotic, of course, serving in the military. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you next week, Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.